Okay, hi everyone. So I'm Eric, and this is Lauren again. We had a team of I guess four of us, 3 students, 1 contract faculty member, working on anthropology, specifically cultural anthropology lab development using the Anthropology Museum. Unfortunately, only Lauren was able to be with us today, but this, for me, it was trying to make it as hands-off as possible, giving some supervision to our students and making them, allowing them the space to make some decisions about new resources to bring into our Anthropology Museum to teach in first and second year courses in cultural anthropology. So basically the goals, or what we ended up being the goals of what we were doing over the past term and a little bit, getting new resources for our Anthropology Museum. We have a few with us today for show and tell to support lab-based experiential learning for the cultural anthropology courses. Contacting and interviewing, I say, makers and designers, and particularly for, and we'll get into this, for Indigenous cultural belongings or cultural items, objects for use in teaching. We also wanted to create connections with the people who had created and were producing those items. Third, investigating some of the older items. We have a lot of cultural resources from the 1960s and 1970s, things that are older than that were kind of donated or came to our collections through donations more recently, where we don't have a lot of information about them. So our students spent a bit of time looking for some of the backstory on those, and then developing learning activities. We didn't quite get to making our actual lesson plans, but I think we made a really good start on this. So what we're doing, to put things into a broader context, is in the museum anthropology world is what we call object-based learning. There's actually a lot of discussion about this, and I think kind of serendipitously perhaps that this project has sort of opened up some opportunities for me to also network with other colleagues from other institutions. So it's just in the past few months, the Council for Museum Anthropology sort of put out a poll inviting a discussion around different themes for an upcoming conference. One of the themes that I expressed interest in answering to this was teaching in and through collections, and sort of volunteered to help coordinate a little bit around that, and kind of expecting maybe 4 or 5 other people might volunteer to do like a conference session. We ended up with 30 plus people saying we're all doing very similar things in different anthropology museums in other universities across North America. So object-based teaching basically is either bringing students in formal education settings into a museum to interact with objects, not sort of looking at them in displays, not just doing a tour, but actually interacting with objects, or alternatively bringing the objects from a museum collection into a classroom and allowing students to do the same thing. So there are kind of some terminological discussions around here. We're trying to move away, and to some extent about language about calling things objects, and maybe we can get into that later. But some of the current discussions around this relate to the idea of multisensoriality. So they can try to engage with material culture and try to understand the experience of material culture through smell and not so much taste, but textures, feeling things, and creating this real sense of connection to objects. And of course, experiential learning, sort of reflection on learning. Obviously, there are logistical and ethical issues involved in examining and writing about or learning about other people's cultural belongings. So in the context of our University of Winnipeg Anthropology Museum, we do have a very nice, rich collection. A lot of the ethnographic resources that we have are somewhat older. I put here kind of in quotation static, and this is a term that I've heard from some of our colleagues. We have a number of ICR courses in our department, and this has been kind of a point of concern for some colleagues who are feeling like, we don't want to be presenting Indigenous culture in particular as, just traditional, right? Like there's a lot that's happening today that's really vibrant and creative, and let's, do things that are more contemporary. So with that in mind, a large part of the work that we did was to collect new, creative, exciting, interesting, and engaging types of resources to bring into these courses. So Intro to Cultural Anthropology and Linguistics, Intro to Cultural Anthropology, Indigenous Focus, Ethnography, Indigenous Peoples in Canada and the US, Method and Theory in Cultural Anthropology. And we ended up working on these basically six themes, right? Indigenous fashion and design, nationalism and currency, right? So national symbols. We did object study, toys and games, sort of building on an existing lab. We did one on museum gift shops, so like objects that are, so, and I think you'll talk about this, yep. Right? That are made to be sold as in gift shops and are forms of self-representation, and then finally food and taste. Okay, and this is, maybe I'll pass this over to Lauren. This is actually Ursula Hudson. She's somebody we spoke with yesterday over Zoom. She's, we got the bandana from her. This is an example of like one of the websites from our students made the selections of interesting resources. So this is her Sister Bear Learns to Listen scarf. We had a nice conversation about this particular motif, but she's actually much more renowned and accomplished as a Chilkat blanket weaver. She's one of very few sort of expert weavers around today, and so we had almost a 2-hour conversation around the process of that and how that kind of represents for her like a political act of continuing to weave and that sort of thing. But
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we talked with, as Dr. Thrift was saying, we talked with Ursula Hudson yesterday. It was a really wonderful conversation. I believe she grew up in Alaska, and she told us about how the Sister Bear design is kind of a representation of her. It involves some stories around, her family and her mother's family and how she kind of represents that in her work. But most of her work is not done through her store, which she mentioned she doesn't make a lot for her store. She mostly makes a lot through I'm forgetting the word for it. Basically, museums will request that she creates these
commissions.
Commissions. Yeah, that's the word for it. Thank you. That she'll commission these Chillicat blankets for them, and they take like 1,000 to 2,000 hours to make, and it's like you have to it's like weaving through braiding. It sounds incredible, but it's kind of interesting. She mentioned that there's a price difference, that if somebody's going to be using it, that's their purpose is to be used, because she explained that they have spheres within them, so their purpose is to be used, but if they're going to be in a drawer at a museum, there's going to be kind of, a markup for that, because that's not their intention, but that's what's it going to be. So I thought that was interesting, and then that kind of is a nice segue into our next topic, which is our museum gift shop collection. So one of the things that we want to do for both future classes and for the Anthropology Museum is that we want to examine how Indigenous artists and companies create items for museum gift shops. And through this, we want to examine how these items can celebrate Indigenous cultures while also commercializing them for a wider audience. So for example, this mug here, this is a salmon motif done in the style of, it's an Indigenous, Northwest Indigenous cultural style. And while it does represent, the artist has explained that he really enjoys seeing his designs around Vancouver, for example. He feels like he's creating a Indigenous cultural revolution, but the use of a mug is kind of this very utilitarian, everyday object that you expect to see in a gift shop. So we kind of want to see the balance between those two things. And these are some of the highlights of what we purchased from these museum gift shops. So this is my personal favorite that we got from the gift shops. This is a little caribou antler doll. So it's a small doll created from caribou antler and sinew. The artist is unknown, but it was created in Arivat, Nunavut. And what it says, I believe we got this from the WEG, and what they said on the WEG is that basically it's kind of a collaboration. Children and adults in the community will get together and they create these little dolls, and they're created using traditional Inuit doll making techniques. So they have a few different sizes of these on the WEG's website, and it's kind of it's a community participation in kind of creating and revitalizing these traditional doll making techniques. Another example of what we have are these salmon servers. So these were designed by Paul Windsor, who is a Haida and Helkshuk artist. These servers were inspired by coastal traditions of gift giving and sharing salmon at feasts. And in Northwest Coast Indigenous cultures, the salmon is a symbol of abundance, nourishment, and determination. So by having them on these servers, you are representing those, those big themes as you're creating a meal and sharing with your family. Another example that we were really excited about are these aromatherapy diffuser acorns. These are a natural aromatherapy device created by LJ Turtle Aromatherapy. These diffusers use the acorn as a representation of the future. As they explain, we have a little card with them, but as they explained on the card, the acorn, you plant an acorn, you grow a new tree, and it's a representation of the future and how we can always look forward. They are also handcrafted, so no two acorns are alike, and LJ Turtle Aromatherapy states that they are hopeful that the 94 calls to action made by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission will be implemented so that Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island can begin the healing process. So while these are both kind of a multi-sensory device, they also have this message behind them. We also have the salmon enamel mug and the Visions of Our Ancestors enamel mug. So I think the salmon enamel mug is being passed around right now, but that's the Visions of Our Ancestor one.
And this is a weaving pattern transposed to a ceramic mug.
So the salmon mug was designed by Maynard Johnny Jr. He is a Salish and Waka artist who is located in British Columbia. Similar to the salmon servers, the salmon serves as a symbol of abundance, nourishment, and determination. Meanwhile, the Visions of Our Ancestor mug was designed by Leela Stogan. So she is a Musqueam artist who studied traditional Musqueam weaving in 1984. And as Dr. Thrift mentioned, this mug features her Visions of Our Ancestors design, which I believe she also has on additional weaving patterns as well. And then finally, we purchased a variety of books from museum gift shops as well. I was really excited about this. I'm going into library school in the fall, so I'm kind of a big nerd about books right now. So we got a good mixture of children's books and like more coffee table books almost. So for example, this one here is Onijiwa Sunuinan, Do's and Don'ts, which are traditional Anishinaabe teachings, which has been illustrated by Sarah Rusaska. We also have the Poplar River Anishinaabe Plant Guide, which was by Esther Behrens, Evelyn and Victor Bruce, and Minnie Mason.
It's this one. All right.
Thank you. Has everyone gotten a chance to see the servers, or would like to? Which is a plant identification guide for the Poplar River region. And then finally, we have Oma Zinawan Kizoninian Mishi Ba Witagon, photos from Little Grand Rapids, which is a collection of photos that were taken by American anthropologist A. Irving Hallowell between the years 1932 and 1940. So that's a collection of historic photos, which will be really nice to have for future classes as well. And then along with that, we also wanted to showcase Indigenous art pieces that challenge ideas about Indigenous arts and cultures. So as Dr. Thrift mentioned earlier, a lot of what we have in our current anthropology collection is quite a bit older. A lot of it was collected in the 1970s, and it's kind of they're very static representations of cultures. So we wanted to find objects that combined modern Indigenous made. So we wanted to find objects that remixed traditional Indigenous art forms, such as beading, with modern iconography, such as the UFO, which is seen here. This is by Michaela Stevens. And we found these artists through the website Indigenous Fashion Arts. And from their list of artists, we then selected a handful of artists to purchase from and contact for more information on the connections of the items shared with the artists themselves. And nearly all items take traditional Indigenous art and culture and apply to modern representation. So some examples of those is that we have these really lovely posters from a company called Chipaware. So they are basically remix of well-known Hollywood movies and with Indigenous characters. So we have this guy here. We have A Nightmare at a Residential School as well. We have the Raven. And then finally we have the Lady and the Res Dog. So as Jay states on his product's website, since the dawn of cinema, Native Americans have been misrepresented by Hollywood. These paintings are meant to encourage the discussion around cultural appropriation and the representation of Indigenous people in film and television. As stated there, for example, a lot of American media will usually feature Indigenous characters in like Western movies where they would be the bad guys. So these posters put Indigenous people at the forefront of the stories. Another example is that we have some really gorgeous earrings now. So we had these acrylic Arctic char earrings by Tegan Volsky from the Littlest Inukshuk Inc. Those are I think it's like laser cut acrylic. And then we have, these are natural sealskin and salmon fish skin earrings by Cheryl from Proudly Indigenous Crafts and Designs.
Yeah, she called them fish leather.
Yeah, they're fish leather. So I think Dr. Thrift passing them around, but basically these guys were tanned. They're actually really soft. I think the scales have been removed, but they're very, very soft leather. It's very unique. So the Arctic char is an important fish for the Inuit. Tegan created these indigenous art pieces to help connect her to her culture, and while also celebrating and expressing her Inuit heritage. Along with that, the sealskin and salmon skin earrings. I was not part of this interview, but I believe it was Jared interviewed Cheryl, who created these earrings, and she stated that the indigenous method of tanning fish improves the tanner's connection to the environment while still using every part of the fish. And Cheryl also mentioned how indigenous fashion and art is almost hipster, as they don't copy other designs, rather by going off of their cultural identity for inspiration. In addition to that, we also have this tattoo print, which was created by Greg and Mitchell at Born in the North. Oh my goodness. And these tattoos are inspired by traditional indigenous culture, but I believe it's called the traditional American style. So once again, it's a remixing of indigenous cultures with kind of the Western world. Next, now we have currency, and I'm going to.
Do you want me to talk? Okay, I can talk about this.
Yes.
So this actually, Jared prepared these slides, but let's see. Yeah, so we do actually also. This is for a separate lab or a set of lab activities on nationalism and national symbols. So that's one of the things that we like to study in cultural anthropology. Sort of how ideas about identity can be constructed, right? In some cases, very deliberately so. And so this is well, we were hearing earlier about like purchasing from from Facebook Marketplace, and in our case, we were buying a lot from eBay. I used the purchasing card, so we got away with it, I guess. But no, there's a lot out there. Various collectors, have, and they're quite inexpensive, as I learned. So very, very interesting images that we were able to choose here. And so we're looking at ideas about how nation states construct ideas of national culture, how symbols change over time. In some cases, appropriation of indigenous symbols. So an example of that would be, this is the $1 banknote. I think it was a 1966 issue from the $1 of Australia. It has indigenous rock art figures, but also this on the left-hand side. On this side here, it's called the Mortuary Feast of Gurimingu, which is a bark painting by David Malangri, which was taken without his permission. The painting he'd actually done and had sold to a Czech collector, who then sort of supplied it to the National Reserve Bank of Australia, who said, oh, let's put this on the banknote. And then there was the whole conversation around, like, did he actually have the permission to sell this because he's a ward of the state? So a lot of very interesting kind of conversations sort of around this currency and appropriation of symbols, use of symbols to construct national identity. If you've done any reading about settler colonialism, we know that appropriation of local symbols is a big part of what we describe as processes of colonization. So I think bills like this are a very interesting point of entry into conversations around that, but also combined with things like, well, here's the guy who introduced like sheep to Australia and New Zealand. We've got this very traditional kind of Japanese banknote here with poetry on it. We've got figures of nature. The personification of the nation state in the figure of a woman from Brazil, similar to the whatever her name is, the French lady. These are both from, where is they from? Algeria. Yes, Algeria. One showing satellites and space and technological development, and the other one showing much more traditional scenes of prayer. So I think a lot of very interesting conversations for our students to have around sort of how these kind of symbols come together to represent different facets of what we would consider to be a national culture, a national identity, and who's involved in those, who created them, what's appropriated in the process. Yeah. If we can, is this gonna?
We have.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll skip. Okay. Anyway.
Me to finish?
Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. So for this project, I felt like as a student that I've improved, and I think we all collectively improved our knowledge of the current anthropology collection at the university. We also updated the Anthropology Museum collection and gathered materials to improve future labs for anthropology classes. And I feel like for our interviews, we're able to learn about traditional indigenous art techniques directly from the artists, which can also be used as a resource for future students. We haven't done it yet, but we're moving them to. We had a group, Sotero Library, so I'm going to move our interview. The interview I did with one artist is on there, and I'm going to move the one that we did yesterday on there as well, along with a transcript, so students can access those documents and learn straight from the source. And hopefully we continue to expand and improve the anthropology collection at the University of Winnipeg.
Yeah, and maybe to end off, also a big thank you in advance to Jody, who's going to help with accessioning.
Thank you, Jody.
Jody, so much work. Well, we're trying to, yes. So our students are also, yes, well, tried to put together like a spreadsheet for accession data, so hopefully a bit less work than it might have been, but anyway, it's a big project. And thanks for Experiential Learning Fund for making this happen. Thank you very much.